All right, team, if I could all get you to raise your right hand, grab your microphone, give it a really good push at the base. Excellent, thank you. Excellent, team. We are now live streaming, and I think we've got everyone present that we can kick it off, and we've got a quorum. Excellent. All right, team. Well, look, we're going to get into it. I want to welcome staff, elected members, members of the public to the Strategy and Operations meeting for Thursday, the 17th of June. Like to move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the council blessing, and Councillor Buswell is going to read out the council blessing.
Thank you. E a mātou e whiriwhiri ana, e nā taki ke mua e o mātou aroaro. I pono ana mātou kia kaha tono ke te whakapau mahara huapai mō nā hapori I mahu ne mātou. Mi kaha hoki mātou katoa ke whaihua ke tō tika te mātou mahi. E mā te maia te tiro whakamua me te hiehiri kātaia te arahi e roto e te kotahitanga me te aroha.
Kia ora, thanks, Councillor Buswell. Just before we move on to item number 3, just want to remind the room, elected members and other participants of the meeting that our expectation around conduct, that I will not hesitate to draw poor conduct to attention. Looks like we've got a good bunch today, but just as I said, I want to say that at the start of every meeting, just to remind everyone of what's expected of them in terms of behaviour in this chamber. So move on to item number 3, which is apologies. And I think we have apologies from Councillor Elliott. And His Worship, the Mayor is leaving early, and also Councillor Randall will be leaving early. They've both got other commitments.
Also, I'll have to leave about 11:45, 12-ish.
Oh, there you go. We've got some, so quorum-wise, I think we'll still be all right if we lose those 3, correct? Yeah, just right. So if we could have someone move those apologies. Councillor Compton, seconded by Councillor McCann. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Item number 4, declarations of interest. I'm aware that we've got one at least. Mr. Mansell?
Yes, I'm named, or the company I work for is named in 8.1 Wharemauku Park. So
Excellent.
Declaring my received interest.
Yeah. Thank you. And is there anyone out? Councillor McCann?
It's not really a declaration of interest, just clarifying that I was sitting on the committee as sort of the acting chair for the funds that we'll be talking about later.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any others. And just remind me, because we've not often had, do we move and second the declarations, or just noted? Just noted. Thank you. All right. So item number 5, public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. Just before I ask those that are speaking in public speaking to the lectern, we have the item on the agenda around the Wharemauku Stream Precinct, and we've got Marco here today that was happy to answer any questions around it, and we've also got Mr. Mansell as well, whose company is named in the report as well. Under our normal meeting procedures, there's not really an opportunity for non-members of the or people to answer or respond to questions from elected members. That's usually reserved to ask questions to staff. So in terms of finding a way forward just to enable them to be available to speak to matters within the report and be available to answer any questions from elected members, Marco will speak in public speaking and Mr. Mansell will leave the table as well. partly to be available to answer any questions from the report that elected members may have, and then it doesn't put Mr Mansell in a awkward position sitting at the table as well. So Marco, maybe if you just pop up first, and then we'll move to Richard.
Test. Yep. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much for Council commissioning this report. It's quite an exciting moment for Wharemauku Park that we're now formally in front of the Council Committee. So for me, that's a very exciting moment. I'm here to answer any questions. I'd like to pass my apologies for Tākari Kotaro of Pukitapu, the Vice Chair, Deputy Chair. She would have loved to have been here this morning to again also answer any questions, but she has written a response to the report, and it's seen as Appendix 1 in our information memorandum. So if there are any questions from my email last night, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Marco. And look, I'm not sure if all elected members have had an opportunity to read it. I've gotten through partway through it. An email was circulated last night from Marco. So if there are any questions out of either the report or the MOU that was sent through last night from Marco, now would be a time to ask them, because he won't be able to speak through the course of the agenda item. Mr Burns.
Are you aware that the area...
I can hear you.
Okay. Are you aware of the area there where you're planning this structure? There's actually a massive floodplain, and a certain floods, and I've seen one of them, that that whole area either side of the river is a complete body of water.
Yes, we are aware of that. Oh, yes, certainly are aware of that, and we've been working with Council on hoping to see a hydrology report, which will then work out where the stormwater retention lakes or wetlands need to go, and then of course the assets of the park can be resolved around that. But it's a vision at the moment, so there's nothing in concrete apart from the fact that we have a lease for the whale song site.
Any other questions from elected members for Councillor Compton?
Thank you, through the chair. So just as one of the issues brought up in the report is how this sort of interacts with some of the flood reserves around there. I guess one of the central points of this park is about restoring the stream and helping it work in terms of stormwater management and that. So you'd see that as working, sort of complementing that sort of the flood reserves part of it.
Nothing's going to happen on all of the land until that's sorted. So in all our documentation we state that that is stage 1 of anything. So yeah, I mean, even the whales may have to move if it's seen that from the hydrology study that the ponding area is best right there. So at the moment we are awaiting results from that hydrology study, so then we can start working out a bit of a better plan.
And just a follow-up question as well. In terms of, I guess, because it's talked about in the report about the council land there is designated for a civic precinct. In your experience, given you've got quite a long history of working in sort of sculptures and public parks and those sorts of things, that sort of the sort of vision you've got for this, that would complement a civic space, and that it has the civic spaces typically have some sort of open, green, accessible public space in them for people to actually congregate. It's not all just about buildings that fulfil legislative functions, is it?
Not at all. No, not at all. It's certainly we need these green spaces in amongst what is about to be developed, and it's a huge chunk of land. So it's time to look at the stream that's been regarded as a bit of a drain and restore that. So yes, it's for me it's an integral part of having a city, which is what we're heading towards. And we do need a central park, much like London and New York, and to name many, many others. Those cities were built around their parks, and here we have an opportunity to do exactly that. So yes, I think we have to look at the park and then make sure our developments are complementary to the park. Yeah.
Councillor Holborough.
Thank you. Through the chair, first of all, Marco, congratulations on the huge amount of work and tenacity over many years that's gone into this project. Certainly, my hat off to you. The first question I had is around iwi. So I was at the Te Whakaminenga or Kapiti meeting in February where this was presented, and the chair said they would take it away to iwi for consideration. Has that happened, and have you heard back?
Nothing, no. Apart from Tākiri discussing things directly with Whakarongotai, haven't heard anything else from Whakaminenga, no.
Okay. And my second question is around a feasibility study. Has that been done, or are there plans to do one?
Well, the feasibility study's sort of been a difficult thing to look at because the project's sort of gone from the whales and now Wharenui and the forest nursery and the playground and the stream and the hydraulics. And so I believe a feasibility study is something that will come out of a more formalised working group.
Right.
And we're, you know, the stakeholders in that land certainly want to see a result. So I think that's got to come. But I think parks are proven all around the world as to how feasible they are. So it'll be interesting to see what Angus and Associates or someone like that produced by way of feasibility. But I think it would be a very supporting document.
Thank you very much, Marco.
That's okay.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Look, first of all, thank you very much for the information supplied, Marco. It was quite comprehensive and certainly has led to not really needing much questions to be asked. But I just wanted to ask, look, how is the relationship with council? How's that been forming up to date so far?
We understand there's processes in council that we have to go through, and I'm a bit of a bull at the gate. And Guru laughs. I think our relationship's good. I think we just need to move forward in a cooperative and a collaborative way, and that's been my mission all along. I think it's important that we look past the whales. The whales are just one element of what we now see as Wharemauku Park, or Wharemauku House of Ferns is our preference. Obviously the name is still up there for discussion, but naming it after the stream seems pretty simple to me, so and relatively easy to accept.
Thank you for that. And look, just also building on Councillor Halborough's comments around the hapu, we've got the Pukitapu ki Paraparoum hapu involved in all this through Nahina, etc. But that's becoming a lot more of a formalised structure, or?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the forming of the trust is a big part for Pukitapu. It gives them a visible body, which is more than they've had for a long time. And yes, we're both, you know, Pukitapu, Whale Song, Coastlines and Nahina are all walking the same path.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Marco, for coming along and talking to this item today and providing the other information that you have. So I just wanted to clarify something in the paper that we have before us. It's saying that that there've been no conversations regarding about whether about the land, whether it's going to be purchased or how that's going to work. And I just wanted to clarify your take on that, please.
What number was that?
52. Bullet point number 52.
I did respond to that one. 52, 53, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was mainly about whether or not there have been conversations.
We haven't had a formal conversation about anything because nothing's been formalised yet with council. So I think that's obviously where this project has got to go next. I certainly believe a park in its entirety should be the asset of the region and obviously council. We have reserves fees that we pay when we develop properties that are designed to go towards these things. And of course, if we've got 4,500 houses and businesses being designed for that land, there's certainly quite a large chunk of reserve fees coming through which will support green space amongst that development. So I think the park will become an asset of council. As to the whales, if we look at Wellington City Council, they own a huge art portfolio. Whale Song will be a huge asset to Kapiti and to the wider region. I've seen the benefit of large-scale sculpture and it's immense. And Sir Richard Taylor, I did have it in the document, I did take it out, but Sir Richard Taylor has offered to speak to that from a global perspective, and I don't think we could find a better expert on what large-scale sculptures do to communities. But I think the whales would be a huge asset, and if they're put onto the books of council, it would add a pretty good figure to the bottom line. Obviously, the idea is to design a product that has very, very low maintenance requirements.
Thank you.
Councillor McGann.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Marco, and I appreciate that you are helping wean councillors off our LTP reading by providing just a little bit more. I was really impressed that you sent through those documents. One of the questions I have, and I think it's probably simple, is that because this is an evolving process, all your plans are they are malleable because you want to get everybody around the table. Is that?
It's basically what we've done is come along and said we need to have a collaborative approach to resolving one, ditch in the middle of a paddock, and two, to creating a central park around whale song. I mean, I came onto the project as chair of whale song, and from day one I said whale song cannot stand alone. We do need to understand what's built around it, and what we'd hate to see is large buildings with their backs to the sculpture. So part of the vision is being about building a space around that reflects the importance of whale song to Kapiti Coast.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Marco. I think
problem.
that's all for today. I appreciate you coming along and being available.
If anyone needs a copy of that memorandum who hasn't got one, I've got some spares here.
Excellent, thank you. Richard, if you want to head on up. And over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard Mansell, Chief Executive of Coastlines. Sheffield Properties is our land owning and building owning company, and named in the document here. I'm also a director of Nahina Developments, which is the 50-50 joint venture company between Nahina Trust and Alpha Corporation, which is the ultimate owner of Coastlines. We initially got into this project because, as the document pointed out, there was a spare bit of land, and Marco had what I thought was a very good idea. So we're supportive of the project. It initially started as the whales. It's grown along the stream corridor, which we see as a huge asset, and we've got ideas of enhancing it ourselves, but at the moment we've got the hydrology problems, so we're aware of those. I don't really want to say anything else because it's Marco's show, but because we were named in there, I thought I should jump up and say who I am, what I am, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Richard. And I guess that's partly the key point was the ability for elected members to ask any questions of Richard's company's involvement, given it's named in the paper, and he wouldn't be able to answer during the course of the formal part of the meeting as an elected member. So if there are, don't see any names up, no questions for Councillor McCann. There you go. Didn't want to let you go without.
Through you, Mr. Chair, about McDonald's and the Coastlines. But seriously, with most companies, there's a profit motive. So how does giving back to the community in this essence, how do all the board members or owners, how are they articulated that they're supportive of that project?
I'd like to think that Coastlines is a little bit different in that, and I think it's been shown that we're very supportive of giving back to the community. I've always said that we derive all our income from the community, therefore we should be giving back, and the examples are numerous. In this situation, the profit motive is there because if we're going to bring people into the community, they're going to shop at Coastlines. I mean, I'm not completely altruistic. I do have a profit motive behind me, but in this situation, it was a bit of land that we couldn't easily use. It was given back to Nahina Trust, who then transferred it into Nahina Developments for developing their asset. And it was a bit of land that could not otherwise be used apart from some sort of a very passive, hydraulically passive use. So we were happy to throw it in because it wasn't going to take anything away from us, and it was only going to add to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I don't see any further questions from elected members, so welcome back to the table, and we'll move to item number 6A, which is public speaking time responses. I'm not aware that there are any, so we'll move to item 6B, which is leave of absence. Any elected members looking for a leave of absence? No. We'll move to item 6C, matters of an urgent nature. None have been brought to my attention. And so with that, we're going to move on to item number 7, which is the updates. And at this point, I just want to take the opportunity to bring to elected members' attention, if you haven't read your emails this morning, as a bit of a council update. In previous years, we have ranked second overall out of all councils, all 72 councils in New Zealand, as the second most efficient council in terms of our operating expenses per household. As of today, we are now first. So it is one of the metrics that the Ratepayers Report uses to measure the councils. We're 14th in the interest of transparency in terms of our level of rates. So I jumped on this morning and had a quick look. The Mayor asked where Wellington was. It featured so far down the list I had to scroll a bit to find them. And their operating expenses were over double that of Kapiti's per household. I think it's sitting just over $7,000 per household, compared to 3,117, I think, from memory for Kapiti. So good result to the team. It does, however, point to the fact that we're lean and mean, I think is the term that the Chief Executive used, and you often hear that there are a small team of people stretched over doing a lot of things, and so that was a feature that came through the Martin Jenkins report as well. A lot of people trying to do a lot of stuff, or small teams trying to do a lot of things. So I just thought I'd mention it. Just came out this morning. The Ratepayers Report is online if people want to look at the other metrics that are featured in there for Kapiti, but just not during my meeting. Thank you.
Can I just make a comment? The Taxpayers Union has gone up the nose of many councils. They are very hard-nosed critics. So for this accolade, benchmark is actually good. But in terms of lean and mean, I note that Sean Mellon is put on weight.
That was a bit rough.
Revenge is a dish best served cold.
Yes. I think you can expect that one to come back to you, Mr. Mayor. All right. So, look, I think it's over to you now, Sean. Your turn.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this presentation actually is rather lean on that point there. In terms of duration, Lindsay, the project manager for Takutai Kapiti, is actually away sick today, so I'm going to run through the slides and I'll try and answer as many questions as I can, but it's really just a brief update on where the project is currently at, and we have had a briefing recently in terms of the science and methodology that's also sitting behind this project, so I'll just run through the slides. So Takutai Kapiti today is really probably more about the community assessment panel process and the progress that's been made in that area, then a couple of slides on where to next. So just some background, obviously the 10th of December, paper came to council to set up and move forward with the community assessment panel structure. That was endorsed, and so after Christmas we started the process of looking to recruit the chair in the first instance for the panel, and then from there the chair was to be involved directly in the appointment of the panel members. So we've worked through that process, and we also had assistance. So Jackson Stone, external employment consultancy, have been managing the process externally, then providing information through to the panel. There was a panel that was also part of that approval process in December that was to sign off on the appointments of both the chair and the panel members. So we advertised in March. The interview panel, as I mentioned, 2 councillors and a senior leadership team member, which was myself on that panel, and through the process. We had a number of applications for the chair. We actually went through 2 rounds of recruitment for that position, and went through a number of interviews, and at the end of that process the panel agreed the preferred candidate for that appointment was the Right Honourable James Bolger. So the ex-Prime Minister who resides in Waikanae has or was appointed as the chair of the panel. So as I mentioned, the process was to appoint the chair. The chair would then form part of the assessment panel to recruit or appoint the members of the panel, and the panel membership in terms of the appointment was basically the same. So His Worship the Mayor and Deputy Mayor were on that panel, as well as myself as the Group Manager nominated for that. And for this second process, obviously the Right Honourable Jim Bolger was also part of that panel in terms of the interviews and the selection process. So we had a number of applications, in excess of, I think, 14 or 15 in terms of panel membership. And with the chair, I can't recall the number, but it was, I think, at least 8 to 10 applications for that appointment as well. So again, went through an interview process for each of those members, and preferred candidates were nominated through that process, and then Jackson Stone has again been heavily involved in that recruitment and coordinating, I guess, the final appointment process associated with those from a logistics and formal point of view. So we now have 6 members appointed to the panel, and we're just at the moment waiting for the final paperwork basically to be signed off and that process to be completed. So the other aspect to the overall panel structure itself was the iwi membership, and again the paper that came through in December provided that structure with 6 iwi members, so 2 from each of our mandated iwi partners, and again that also went through to Whakamininga o Kapiti as well to endorse that process. And that process in itself, we're now in, I guess, right in the middle of that in terms of finalising the nominations from our iwi partners to actually form the last stage, I guess, of the panel in terms of its structure that will then allow us to move forward and start to work through the project. So there's a Art Confederation hui on the 29th of June, where we are hoping that we will have those nominations provided in terms of iwi membership for the panel. So hopefully by the end of June we'll have, I guess, all the formal structure side set up in terms of membership. I think also on the panel we've got a Greater Wellington Regional Council sort of advisory role, and Dr. Ian Dorr has nominated, is the nominated Greater Wellington Regional Council rep on there, and there also will be a kaumatua there to support the chair, and that process in terms of who that would be something we would discuss on the 29th of June to formally lock that in as well. So the moving forward from hopefully the end of June, early July, we would have the full sort of named membership of that panel agreed and endorsed. Then we will then move to lock in a program of meetings. At the moment, the intention was to meet potentially once a month, I think, as a minimum in terms of the project. And also as part of that, there's a number of community workshop type open sessions proposed at the moment. I think there's 2 of those proposed, and that work to then continue over the next 12 months in terms of the deliberations of that panel, supported by the work that Jacobs have been doing in terms of the science, which again we've discussed previously in terms of the methodology associated with that. So I guess you'll see a lot more visibility over the project once the final names are locked into the panel, and we will then also be looking at doing more external communication to give the community a bit of a program in terms of the work that's coming with this, and make everyone aware who the panel members are. And we'll also obviously be bringing them through to council to meet with you once we've finalised the final stage in July, to then move into the project, if you like it, proper from then on. So that was the slides, Mr. Chair.
Very good. All right, a bit to take in there. Good to see that project moving along, and from what I hear, some good candidates stepping up to the role as well. So, Councillor, Mr. Burns, I read that wrong. Questions?
Yeah, is the chair's position paid, or any other panel members paid positions?
So through you, Mr. Chair, yes, they are paid positions. The fee structure was part of that paper that was presented and endorsed by Council in December. If I can't recall what the amount is, but I'm pretty sure the paper's on the public, is actually available on the website, if you'd like to have a look at it.
So the fee structure is in a publicly available document that is part of the council papers on the website and signed off by this council. His Worship the Mayor.
Sean, in terms of the original projected timeline for this, at the moment, are we still within that or starting to stretch?
At the moment, we're within the overall program, but it is now quite tight in terms of deliverables within that 2-year period. So we're basically working towards, I think it's a 2-year time frame to advise the changes to the district plan that would come from this in terms of the coastal area. So the appointment process has taken a bit longer in terms of the chair and the membership, and starting to eat into contingency timing that we had allowed for in the project. So I'd say at the moment we're pretty much not a lot of room left for movement in terms of any other further delay. Yes. So that 12-month window might seem like a reasonable amount of time, but there is a lot of work to get through, and just the community aspects of that, and bringing information back through to council as well. So that's where we're currently sitting. I just might add, sorry, Mr. Chair, the comment around the payment to the panel, those payments were also in line with the council's policy around payment for meetings and involvement in that type of activity.
Thank you. So I don't see any further questions. So I'm not too sure if you're staying up for the next one, Wharemauku Park. All right, so there's nothing there to be voted on, so we're just going to move on to item number 8.1. Thanks, Sean, for walking us through that. And then if the relevant staff can pop up for... Okay. You're welcome to. There might be some questions around the stormwater stuff anyway. All right, team, so we're moving through nicely, which is great because we've obviously got a few elected members that want to slip away a little bit later. We're now on page 7, item 8.1, Wharemauku Park, and I'm just going to hand it over to Angela to walk us through the report. I imagine there might be a number of questions throughout this paper, so if we can just let staff go through the report, we'll open it up for questions. If you could stick succinctly to questions, and then just remember, if we're going to have debate, that is in debate when we come to debate. Over to you.
Kia ora, everyone. So the Wharemauku Park paper, I'll just do a brief intro. So I'll largely take it as read, but as you note from the paper, we have gone through and had a look at the available information that's out there and identify a number of opportunities with the proposal, as well as some possible issues and a range of uncertainties. The advice was requested in order for council to be able to make a decision on formally supporting the proposal at this stage. So we've provided some specific advice on that, which was that high-level support at this time is likely to be appropriate, but given the amount of uncertainty that there is within the project, given its early stages, that is probably the extent of support, and more specifically support around the restoration of the Wharemauku stream is also in line with council's aspirations for the area, so is another specific thing that council may wish to look to support through this process. Unless you want me to particularly work through the paper in more detail, I'm happy just to open it up to questions at this point.
No, that's fine, and I just want to comment certainly from my perspective, it's a pretty thorough report, so I appreciate the work that's gone into providing information to elected members, and it certainly, I guess, highlights the levels of complexity that need to be considered when giving support to a particular project, not just this one, but any one. Personally, I think it's a fantastic project, but as a representative of the ratepayers and community, we've obviously got to be mindful of what we are committing to when we use words around support and endorsement and so forth. So I think it's, as I said to Marco at the start of the meeting, before the meeting started, this is a stake in the ground or a first step in a larger process moving forward. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions relating to the report itself. Obviously, we can't ask any questions of others in the room relating to their matters. So people can start. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Compton? I thought you pushed the button.
I was about to see if anyone else is going, because my voice isn't quite where it should be at the moment. Through the chair, I was sort of picking up on recommendation 75.5 that should council wish to provide a stronger level of support for the Wharemauku Park concept in future, further investigation would be required. I was wondering if today would be the opportunity for us to actually, as a governing body, to indicate that it would be could be useful to set up something like a working group or join the current working group on this project to actually try and see how we can make it work, make their vision work in with the various, possible hiccups along the way in terms of district plan and that sort of thing. I was wondering if today would be sort of the appropriate time to put forward an additional recommendation like that, or should we be waiting for further down the track to do something like that?
I'll let staff respond, but I just want to note that His Worship the Mayor has signalled an additional recommendation today as well, which isn't exactly in line with that. So just given that one suggestion's already come up, I think it's fair to mention His Worship has one as well. So I'll just go to staff and then we come back to addressing that.
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, so I think the report talks about the stormwater. So there are a number of elements that were referenced in the report that are, I guess, either embedded in current work programs for council or are part of previous work that's been done in terms of the town centre planning work that's been done previously. So probably the stormwater one is the key in terms of the structure that we have there and the briefing we had recently in terms of the stormwater management strategy work that we're doing at the moment. So there is already, I guess, a working group set up there with regard to, certainly iwi is a big part of that. This is probably more around the Wharemauku aspect of the, I guess, of both the park proposal, but of a wider stormwater strategy that we're already involved in. So I would suggest it might be a bit early to be setting up a working group until we have both the feedback from some of the vision work we talked about in terms of engaging with iwi for the stormwater. You know, that work would feed into a potentially, I guess, a council view on the Wharemauku stream as a whole that could then be the basis maybe of looking at a closer working relationship around what does restoration and enhancement look like for the stream itself, because that work will progress or can progress or will be progressing regardless of what might happen in terms of the Whale Song project itself. So my advice would be there is a number of elements of work that are still in train that need to come back to council, because there are other elements to those work in terms of the wider implications associated with them, both so the stormwater modelling, which was mentioned before in terms of Marco, the intention was to come back and present that to council, because obviously a large part of that relates to both council land and obviously Coastlines and St Heliers, who the other commercial property owner as part of this mix. So we have already been working closely with their technical experts to develop that work. So that would be, I guess, my feedback would be, yes, there are a number of work streams going on at the moment. There are a number of those that would need to be potentially resolved to some extent, like the stormwater, what happens in terms of the Wharemauku from a wider stormwater management point of view, that need to come back to council first, so that you have, or you could be advised, I guess, on that position, and then you might want to look at how can you then factor those elements, knowing the minimum requirements that maybe council have to deliver on as part of the wider park proposal. So,
thank you. In having the benefit of seeing His Worship's additional recommendation, I think it refers to that, the paper requiring some further work to provide some more information. So it kind of leads to Sean's discussion around timeframe. So I think what I'm hearing from you, Sean, is potentially it could be worthwhile, but just from a timing perspective, not right now.
Yes, so we're very close to completing. Again, we mentioned the stormwater work. That is hopefully, we have had some issues with output from that project in terms of timeframes, but these are all things that are likely to be occurring over the next month, 2 months, in terms of coming back to council to talk about the stormwater. There was a time frame that we presented in terms of the stormwater strategy that I can't recall, but there is, so we're not talking 6 to 12 months, we're talking probably within the next 3 to 6 months. A lot of that would be in a position that we could present it back to council to be informed before maybe entering into some sort of more formal agreement.
Cool. Yeah, just following up on that, I guess there's also an intersection between this, the vision for this area and also the district plan, and we've obviously got changes to that are going to be coming up in the next while. And sorry, the district growth strategy as well. And I know that in our discussions and that the importance of green space in those open areas has been highlighted. So I guess I just want to highlight the importance of making sure that it's not just about stormwater, it's about how this interacts with those other things that we've got on our plates at the moment too as well.
That's good, thanks. Councillor Hanford.
Just like to firstly total Corgwin's last point there, and my question is just kind of clarification for myself and maybe others too around recommendation 75.2 agrees to support the broad vision of a central park for Paraparoum Town Centre only. Is that referring to only the broad vision or only for Paraparoum Town Centre? Just to get that right in my own head, I guess.
That was the broad vision for the town centre at Paraparoum. So that whole kind of space that we're talking about here.
Just to add, so that, and I think we mentioned the fact that a lot of this complements or aligns with work that's already previously been done. So part of the current council town centre concept plans does involve a place-based park area that's already in the proposal. So so that, I guess, is sort of in line with that recommendation, as well as potentially what might be achieved in working closer with the Wharemauku Park concept.
Sophie, I noticed I think you went to say something else. Are you done or you're okay? Okay, Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Look, just actually building on Mr. Malone's comments there, I note that in a lot of the previous plans, there is open space, and we know there's hydrology issues in the area. But in my opinion, this fits the bill with regards to...
Councillor, can I just check that you've got a question? It's not... Okay.
Yeah, it fits the bill with regards to helping in a lot of those areas, but also is very visionary in that space there as well. I appreciate what's being said around we're in a lot of processes at the moment. My question is, from an indicating of support perspective, which, if you like, enables the project to perhaps look at other forms of funding in regards to what they're looking at doing moving forward, and this will be a larger time frame. What's a good process at this stage with regards to offering that indicator? Is it appropriate now, or is it a way that can be offered in such a way that enhances the work that's being done, but does send a message of support?
Are you asking specifically around the broad vision of the park, or on specific components of the park, I guess?
The broader vision.
I think in the recommendations of the report, we have sort of broadly said that supporting the broad vision of the park at this stage is appropriate, and that And part of the intention behind that, I'm sure, is to be able to provide that kind of broad level support that might assist with funding and all of those types of questions. The limit of that, I guess the limit of that support is what we've kind of been trying to touch on in this paper in terms of the broad vision versus the individual components, is where things get a little bit more difficult in terms of certainty and wanting to put too much weight on what is currently quite an uncertain project.
Can I just clarify in that in lieu of the need for more information on those specific parts of that project, is that right?
Yeah, I could maybe add a little bit of the. So the Wharemauku stream itself is a good example. I mentioned hydrology has been mentioned a number of times, and flood risk, but the environmental, ecological aspects of the Wharemauku and how, again, we've talked about balancing flood risk and flood management with ecology and environment, and the work we're doing at the moment is looking at how you might do that in the context of the Wharemauku. So there's aspects of amenity and access to the stream, but there's also enhancing ecology and the environment. And at the moment, I don't think we know enough about those elements to fully endorse combining those to that extent without doing the further work that we're involved in at the moment. Certainly, Te Atiawa have a strong view around the Wharemauku and the ecology and the restoration of that stream that we need to be conscious of in terms of any sort of work that's done there. Will need to go through some sort of consenting process potentially, but also from a partnership point of view, we're still working on the vision that iwi have from a stormwater stream freshwater perspective that you might then use to advise a stronger level of support for some elements of the Wharemauku. So that's just one aspect of the overall project that we're still working on.
Could I just do a follow-up question in terms of building on Martin's question? From a funding perspective, in your experience, any other external funders wouldn't still need that detailed information, I guess a higher level of information that's currently provided, in order for them to make decisions on the project?
Potentially, I don't know the extent of what funding you might be talking about in terms of the overall scheme, because some elements, obviously, of the Wharemauku, that is a stream that the council manages in terms of restoration and enhancement. There's certainly an element of that you would expect that council would be delivering in terms of funding. So, so if it's for whale stock and things like that, yeah, I don't see that this would be a barrier to looking to continue to get external funding for those, with this recommendation as it stands at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Halliday, do you have further questions?
That's fine, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple of questions, mainly around clarification. So, Sean, you've talked about stormwater, and then also you've talked about hydrology, and it's good that you've given a time frame for the stormwater work, but is the hydrology, because I remember there's been some comments about how a hydrology report was going to come, whether that's actually different?
No, I guess the hydrology encompasses that, so the rainfall that generates flooding, there's an element of stormwater obviously associated with that. So hydrology in its entirety includes all of that. Okay. From a volume point of view. Stormwater from a water quality point of view is probably more around the work that we're looking at in terms of refreshing the Wharemauku stream management plan and the stormwater management strategy, and the work we've talked about there in terms of iwi's involvement in that.
Okay, so in terms of the hydrology, the stormwater component of it, that's going to be completed within the next couple of months?
Yes, so we've already run through a number of different scenarios.
That's
obviously,
what I thought.
That's pretty good.
Well, that answers, yeah, that answers that.
Move on?
Yep. Right, as you were, everybody.
So yes, I have another question, if I may. So yeah,
That's what I thought.
I don't know why it does that, just randomly. So I'm pleased you brought up the Wharemauku management plan, because I'm a little bit confused about this, because paragraph 13 talks about it being in a current form, and I think that's actually from 2005. But then in here it talks about, and I'm not sure whether it's a different document, about refreshing it, and I'm not sure how you can actually refresh a document that's only in a draft form.
Is that a
That's
question to
yes,
me?
Is there more than one document, and can you actually refresh a document that has not been signed off? Basically.
I'm not sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm not
Are
aware
you
of two
pointing
documents.
towards a? So I hear what you're saying. Are you pointing towards a particular document? And if you could maybe just explain the relevance, it might help staff.
Yeah. So it's called the Wharemauku Stream Community Freshwater Plan. 2005. I have a copy of it.
Because the document that we're referring to is the 12.7, page 9 of the report, Wharemauku Freshwater Management Plan, last updated 2015.
So Jocelyn, can you just help in terms of the relevant? I'm not saying it's not a good question, but the relevance in terms of the paper.
Well, it talks about how it's going to be done within the next 12 months, I think it is. But I'm just wondering whether it's actually a much bigger piece of work because it hasn't actually been signed off in the first instance.
The report that you're referring to hasn't been signed off?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't believe that adds any more time to the projected time frame that we're talking about. I guess the elements that form that plan are where the time would be required to pull that together. So yeah, I don't see the fact that the previous one wasn't signed as being a time issue.
Yeah, because it's difficult because I couldn't actually find it on the KCDC website either.
Okay, so maybe we can, if the need is there, to come back to you later around that, if there is a need to.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what I would add to that, I guess, is the broader requirements that exist now in terms of iwi's involvement in the development of that stormwater strategy, which includes the Wharemauku, will be a key part to this, whether you want to call it a refresh or a new plan, if you like, that would be a significant factor of the time associated with the next stage.
Because the copy of the draft that I have got is 2005, and I would imagine that there's been a lot of changes that, requirements that have been updated since then as well.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll take that offline at the end of the meeting. I'll grab a copy of that, I'll check with staff, and if there is a need to come back to you around that, then we'll provide an answer outside of the meeting.
Thank you.
And if it's relevant to all the elected members, then we'll circulate that. Tanika, if you could just note that, and I'll have a chat with you at the end of the meeting, please. Thank you. Was that all, Councillor? Councillor McCann.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Sean, I just wonder if you could answer this. If the council wants to indicate our support for the Wharemauku Park concept, noting that there's still significant work, concept, etc. to achieve, do you think the current recommendations send that signal?
Yes, I think they certainly send a signal that we support the concept. I guess so yes to that, but again, another element of this is the Wharemauku, the naming of that park, and obviously the importance of how you might actually look to name any project piece of, certainly that's a key part again, that's another issue that we need to work through as well. So again, I'm comfortable what we have here sends a signal that we support it, but I'm also conscious there's potentially a suggestion that there might be an addition to it.
Thank you.
And certainly the way that I've read it is it's sort of conditional support, subject to the need for more information as the project evolves. I mean, as I said, His Worship's got an additional recommendation, which I don't think fully covers off the concerns or the questions raised by Councillor McCann or Councillor Compton, but we can come to that in due course. Is there any further questions before we move to the recommendations? Don't see any. Your Worship, do you want to just, I've got a copy of it here, but do you want to just raise and then we'll just, okay, it's going to come up on the screen. All right, so I think we're going to see the additional proposed recommendation from His Worship, who has indicated he'd like to remove the recommendation 74 through to 76 with a new recommendation 76. That is not it there. Your Worship, do you want to just talk to, and then we can get the wording up there and then test it?
I think we need to wind the clock back and see why this report landed. You will recall last year when Marco and members of the Puketapu Hapu came and talked to us about the vision, their vision. And there was unanimous agreement amongst councillors that this is a good idea and we should signal support for it. I raised that issue with the Chief Executive, requesting that a paper come back to us, because we can, in all matters, we can have brilliant thoughts and brilliant response to community requests, but it needs to be tested. With the history of how would I put it? Let me just say that there has already been extensive formal public consultation that has landed the Paraparoum Town Centre design concept. That's the concrete reality.
Can I interrupt you there? Just because it's now up and I don't want to create an example where I'm allowing you rather than other members to speak to it. So I think it's probably helpful if we just go to what's proposed. You can move it and then you can do a right of introduction in terms of, and we'll see whether it's got a seconder. So I'll read it out for everyone if you can't see it where you're sitting there. Council notes the staff report comments in paragraph 13 that the Wharemauku Park concept is a catalyst for conversations about the future of Paraparoum Town Centre. To continue the conversation, Council welcomes a detailed response from the initiators of the Wharemauku Park concept to the issues raised in the staff report. And so if there is a seconder, then we can have a right of introduction from His Worship, and then we can go into debate if others want to debate. So I'll give you a... Sure.
Thank you. So this 76 would be in addition to 74, 75 and that? Okay.
Yes, so it is an additional recommendation to the existing recommendations in the report, essentially saying that it welcomes further information from the project team, I guess, in short summary. So I'm just mindful of others. We've got a recommendation that's been put, needs a seconder. So I know that you've got your microphone lit up, but is it a clarification?
So,
I just don't want to end up in a...
Yeah, so I'm happy to second it so that we can have a discussion about it. So I'll do that.
Okay. All right, so
that we
seconded
can talk about it.
by Deputy Mayor Holborough. So right of introduction, Your Worship.
So this is a continuation of the process, and so the request I made to the Chief Executive for a response in terms of the reality of what the new proposal is and the where we are at already in terms of the town centre. And therefore this report is actually a good one because it shows warts and all what are the issues at stake. But having said that, the initiators of this haven't had time to respond to the report. I think it's only fair that the conversation continues, because if you look at paragraph 13, I think that's a critical statement, the staff observation, that this has initiated a discussion on the future of the Paraparoum Town Centre concept. That's where the core of this lies. This will allow them to come back to us. It will allow us to also look through a whole range of issues. So basically continuing the conversation given what has been laid out by staff, and therefore I think it's a prudent measure of supporting the continuation of the conversation on a range of issues, because this is a highly complicated and interlinked with different stakeholders in this. Our issues in terms of Puketapu Hapu and the EV and our way we respond to that, the Wharemauku stream in itself. I know that the other recommendations, it does show that 75.3, the immediate work can start on the Wharemauku stream. So it's a whole range of issues that can be discussed, and I've tested it with Marco. He's welcomes that possibility of the conversation continuing, giving them time to engage with council's staff's report in a much more comprehensive way. I think it's only fair that they be given the chance.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. So I just want to remind people that said at this earlier in the meeting, that's the start of a conversation. It's a big project. Rome wasn't built in a day. It certainly allows us, as Worship has said, the team to respond to the items laid out in the report. We now move into debate, and so I just want to remind elected members we're looking at recommendations 74 through to and including the new recommendation of 76. That is what we're debating, not just 76, as Worship's put, 74 through to 76, seconded by Councillor Holborough. So don't all hold back in terms of pushing your buttons, and then we can debate and then see whether we've got enough to put it to the vote. So Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Yes, as having studied classics, I'd agree Rome wasn't built in a day, though they did pick the 7 hills in one day. But I'd like to suggest just one possible amendment to 76, if I could, because I'm relatively happy with it, and I think it sort of goes some way to what I was talking about before, which I appreciate the Mayor bringing that forward. And I was just wondering if, after the words detailed response, we could add in a comma, working collaboratively with council staff, comma. So just to emphasise that we want to actually work with the Whale Song Trust to help them develop this, because obviously I think it'd be good if additional issues do come up from various things that are going on. It would be good that we're able to address those as this goes, so that when it does come back further down the track, it's a bit more developed for us. So hopeful the Mayor might.
I've just heard both the Mayor and the Deputy say yep as you said that. So normally,
I think it's in my mind was a given, but beyond that.
Chief Executive.
I would hope that's what we always do. Very happy to see that spelled out, as long as everyone understands that does not mean we will commission work to answer questions. We have no resources set aside to work on this project, and if, as a result of questions, it is that piece of work is needed, that is not our definition of this collaboration. So I just want to be clear that we'll happily answer questions, provide information. We will not commission work as part of working collaboratively on it at this stage.
So I guess that's just Chief Executive making clear expectations around what the wording means, and I guess referring to there's no budget put aside to do that in terms of it's within existing staff time and so forth. So look, what I've heard there is both the mover and the seconder is happy with that amendment without going through a formal amendment process. So thank you, Councillor Compton. Councillor Holborough, I notice you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to reiterate what I said during public speaking and acknowledge the huge amount of work that's gone into this project to date and the wonderful collaboration that's happening with Puketapu Hapu as well. I think, yeah, as His Worship says, this kind of lays out, warts and all, what the present situation is. I'm comforted that we've had a response from staff to say that this should be enough for the project to continue to raise funds, but that's something we can support it more as this collaborative conversation happens, and I like that the door's left open for that. And I think this is the most we can do right now with the information we have in front of us, and I look forward to continuing to talk about this exciting opportunity for our town centre. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Buswell.
Thanks. I'd like to support what Janet has just said. Thanks, Janet. I've just been having a look at the Paraparoum Town Centre structure plan that was signed off in 2012, and I think that this is a fantastic example of what we strive for in this council, is to lay down a plan for community to work alongside us to actually deliver or help deliver and facilitate this. And I'm really pleased to see that this project has strived ahead and worked with all these all these land holdings to be able to pull together this project that is actually very much in line with our Paraparoum Town Centre structure plan that was set out in 2012. So I fully support this project going ahead, and we need to do what we can to carry the project on and help out where we can.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I'm supportive of all the comments being made by the councillors, and I'm very heartened to hear that Sean has said that he believes that these recommendations do show our support for the general concept, noting all the work that needs to occur to make it happen. So on that basis, I'm certainly supporting these recommendations, including the Mayor's addition.
Thank you. So I don't see any further names on the screen. So, Councillor Halliday.
Sorry, I think as Ward Councillor I should comment. Look, I agree with everything that's been said so far as well. In my opinion, now is the time to be stepping in, not stepping out of this conversation. I think there's been a lot of groundwork done, and referring back to the plans for that area in general that have been around for well over a decade, that this is a good option to be potentially partnering with community in a community partnership as we go forward with a lot of key stakeholders in this area. I do note the announcement from our southern neighbours, re the gondola and the adventure park vision, which is going to be happening down the road, Transmission Gully. So we're just up the road from that, and I think it's important that we step into visionary aspects of this and support that aspect. I do appreciate there is a lot of nuts and bolts involved in this process, but I'm comfortable. Well, I'm hopeful that we'll be working through all that to achieve a fantastic result that council is happy with, the community is happy with, and the stakeholders are happy with.
Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, like the other councillors have mentioned as well, I'm excited, and it's really awesome that these recommendations have come to council, and I just think carrying on into the future, that community conversation still needs to be strong. So, for example, the Wharemauku hui that we had down at Te Raukura ki Kapiti with Dr. Catherine Knight, continuing conversations like that within the community and the resources that are being developed for the school kids, all of those various parts of the project. I think it's important that we kind of do what we can to, I guess, elevate those conversations and get more people involved, bringing in the right people to be a part of those very important conversations as we move forward. So appreciate that probably won't take funding, but just looping in people where we see necessary and making sure that we are present in those conversations and know that they're happening. Yeah.
Thank you. So now I don't see any further lights on the screen. I take the opportunity to thank you for coming along, Mark, and also your passion for this project. And your willingness to meet with us and work with us on this. So, like everyone else has said, I think it's a really exciting project for the district, not just for Paraparoum. And I think, as others have said, that the paper outlines the challenges and the opportunities that exist, and that the desire for this council to work collaboratively with the team to progress this forward. And as I said, this is just simply the start of the process, and I imagine we'll have some more sort of fulsome discussions as we start to unravel the pieces of that puzzle that exist in Wharemauku Park and Stream area. So I'm going to put that to the vote. I think everyone that's wanted to have a say has had a say. So it's been moved by His Worship the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Holbrow, with the addition of recommendation 76 with an amendment, unofficial amendment proposed by Councillor Compton. So all those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, and that is carried. And thank you to staff for walking us through the report. So we, just thinking in terms of time, I just see the stuff about to head up, and a little bit of a memory prompt for me in terms of how long we've been going for. Would elected members like a short toilet set? I see the union rep there shaking his head before we move to the next agenda item. All right, so we're going to break for, I'm going to say 10 minutes because it's never 5, and we'll be back in at 10 to 11. Sorry, Aston and Hamish.